This is Beat the Closing Line.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beat the Closing Line. I am your host, Nicole Russo, alongside NFL analyst for TheLines.com, Eli Hershkovich, one of our premier analysts. And you know, every Thursday we have a special guest that's going to talk NFL betting and give us their perspective on the games for this week. Today we're going to be talking to Brad Allen, formerly of TheLines.com and a legal sports report, and now a gambling industry analyst for Eilers and Krychek Gaming. Brad, thanks for joining us today. I know you just got off of a pretty long flight from Las Vegas, so thanks for staying up. How are you doing today?
I have had about 2 hours sleep in the last 36 hours, but on the plus side, I did grind about 9 hours of NFL podcasts on the flight. So I've got a lot of ideas. I don't necessarily have the numbers written down, so excuse me if I'm not that precise, but I feel like I have a good idea of what to expect.
I give you credit for going through 9 hours of podcasts on a 10-hour flight. I would have fallen asleep, but good for you. Before we get started on the interview, make sure to like this, subscribe, hit the notifications button on YouTube so you know every time we post a new video. And of course, if you are listening wherever you get your podcasts, especially on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review for your chance to win an Amazon gift card, and subscribe to Beat the Closing Line on Apple Podcasts. Eli, I think you are going to start us off with the first question of the day.
Yeah, Brad, the only thing that's worse than getting 2 hours of sleep is talking about the Commanders and the Bears. The Bears were 1-point favorites earlier in the week, I think up to -1.5. Now that's flipped to Washington -1 pretty much at every shop. There are some pick'ems still available. Totals dipped down from 40.5 to 38. As late as Thursday morning, early Thursday afternoon. Any bets for you in this game? You know, there were the reports earlier in the week and today that Dan Snyder was the reason why the Commanders traded for Carson Wentz, and he's off to a rough start. Justin Fields has performed a little better as of late over the last couple games. So what are you looking to bet on Thursday Night Football, Brad?
I've got to say, I'm quite excited to bet the Washington football commander team here. It seems like, obviously the concern is this internal strife, isn't it? We kind of saw that last week with Carolina. I think sometimes the team can quit on their coach, and if he's literally, Ron Rivera's throwing his quarterback under the bus, and then this Dan Snyder stuff today, you do worry a little bit about the focus. But on the field, I feel like the matchups are great. Obviously, I think you're kind of buying low on the Commanders because they faced some demonic pass rushes in the last 2 weeks in the Cowboys and the Eagles, who've just destroyed them, essentially. Like, Wentz has had no time. And Wentz holds onto the ball. He's got a long, loopy throwing action. So I think he's particularly susceptible to those types of pass rush. And that's just the opposite of what we've got here. Chicago Bears pretty much dead last in any pass rushing metric you could look at. Like Robert Quinn, by far their best pass rusher, and he's he's well over the hill and well past his best. So I'm expecting Wentz to have a lot of time, and they do have good weapons, the Commanders, and that's one thing you can say for them. And Wentz is willing to take shots down the field. And then just on the other side of the ball, Chicago. Again, it's another trench mismatch in my view. Chicago last in the NFL in adjusted sack rate allowed, 32nd. And Washington D-line, very good, especially in the interior, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. And they're 4th in adjusted sack rate. So to me, you've got big edges on both sides of the ball in the trenches.
We're going to stay in the NFC North for this next one. The Packers are coming off of a pretty disastrous second half against the Giants, and they also lost outright. Now, the look-ahead line for the Packers-Jets was Green Bay -9.5. That's gotten bet down to Pack -7, with some -7.5 at -105 available as well. Now, the Packers are 10-0 against the spread and straight up after a loss under Matt LaFleur, which is the longest streak in Super Bowl era teams, winning and covering following a loss. What side are you looking towards here?
Well, I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this one, because I was looking towards the Jets. I think the travel spot, obviously, the Packers coming back from London, which there's a little trend going around. I think if you've just come back from London without the bye week, the opposing team is going over their team total, I think 6 out of 7 times since they started not taking a bye, which I think logically makes sense to me. And then obviously the Packers' resume is just really unimpressive now. Obviously, Bailey Zappi overtime at home and then getting beat by Daniel Jones pretty comprehensively. Like after the LaFleur script ran out last week, they did nothing in the second half. And I think what was most concerning about that, obviously I watched that quite closely as it was the London game, it was just how bad the Packers receivers are, right? The Giants were down their top two corners. Adoree Jackson left that game. They were already missing their second best corner. And there was no separation. Like the Packers receivers were gloved up. And you would say the Jets have better corners, better defensive line than the Giants. So I think it's pretty concerning for the Packers. I guess the sort of concern I'm starting to have, and what I'd be interested to get your take on is, could you say that last week against the Patriots, they were looking ahead to the London trip. Maybe they weren't that well prepared, I don't know. And then obviously you get the weird London game, which you could also maybe write off. So you could possibly give them a pass if you're being generous.
Yeah, Brad, I'm with you. I'm on the Jets, and I regret it a little bit. But to your point about the Packers' run defense, it's similar to the Patriots script going back to a couple weeks ago, and the Giants, for that matter. You run the ball against this team, you milk the clock, which the Giants did so well in the second half. And granted, that's Brian Daboll versus the Jets coaching staff. But for better or worse, we're both on the Jets at plus 7.5 or plus 7. I'm okay with too. But over to another gross team that you would typically say is bad on offense, but this year a little bit different. The Atlanta Falcons are 5.5, 6-point home dogs to the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers tops in the NFL in opponents' EPA and opponent success rate overall on offense. So this 49ers defense is clicking on all cylinders under DeMeco Ryans. And while the Falcons got screwed against the Bucs last week with that Grady Jarrett personal foul, they're still 5-0 against the spread this season. So total is around, I believe, 44.5. Any bet on the side or the total in this one?
Yeah, this was just the 49ers injuries, essentially, isn't it? They're really starting to mount on the defensive side. I've been the biggest 49ers fan all year long. I've got them to win the NFC West, basically because of that defense. I love the way they play. But could be missing Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, Javon Kinlaw. The corner, Emmanuel Mosley, went down. The safety, Jimmy Ward's got a broken hand. So they could be without 5 starters this week. And, as you say, the Falcons have been very competitive, covered 5 in a row. Like they're not a joke team anymore. And I think if you have to go in there with missing half your starting defense and laying 5.5 points, it just seemed a little bit too big for me, given the state of the actual teams on the field.
I need the Falcons to be a joke team because I'm trying to get to Atlanta for Pittsburgh Steelers, Atlanta Falcons in December. And personally, I think the tickets are a little bit too high for my liking. So, we need Atlanta to tank just so my wallet can feel a little bit better. But all right, on to the late afternoon game. The LA Rams are 10-point home favorites versus the Panthers. Neither Cooper Kupp nor Aaron Donald practiced on Wednesday. You have PJ Walker likely making his 3rd career start in for Baker, who is dealing with an ankle injury. Now, Baker has the 2nd lowest quarterback rating over the first 5 games since the stat was invented. Only Jamarcus Russell's was lower in 2008. The total for this game is sitting around 41.5. Brad, what are you betting here?
Well, I mean, I'm surprised to see the Rams laying 10.5 points here, given what they've put on the field so far. We know we're going to get a good effort from Carolina. Obviously, the interim coach bump. I think I saw the stat that after a firing, teams were 17-9 against the spread over the last few years. Just to sort of show that there is an extra effort. They are going to be focused. And as you say, Baker Mayfield's been terrible. So how much can we really downgrade them to PJ Walker here? Maybe a point, 2 points, but I really don't think it could be much more than that. And then so you look at their offensive output this year. Carolina, as you say, terrible, 31st in offensive DVOA, but the Rams 26th in offensive DVOA. Like they cannot block. They have no one that can really separate or scare a defense other than Cooper Kupp. Like Ben Skowronek is on the field for 70% of the snaps, and just no one is scared of him. So I think the Carolina defense is solid. They've got Brian Burns, they've got Derek Brown, they've got enough up front, I think, to still mess with this Rams bad offensive line. And I think they've got good enough corners that you double Kupp and you're just not scared of anyone else. And again, you're getting 10.5 points. So I can see this one ending like 20-10. But yeah, the Rams are still being priced like they're a good team. But even last year, well, like when Odell went down in the Super Bowl, they were not a good team. They couldn't move the ball in the second half of that Super Bowl game against the Bengals. And now, obviously, the offensive line is much, much worse with the left tackle gone. So, yeah, I just think this is just an inflated line for a bad team.
It's interesting, and granted, the Rams are a bit different than the Packers in terms of the adjustment on the look-ahead line specifically for this week, but you look at dropback EPA for Stafford and Rodgers, and they're both in the back half of the league. Yet, has the market still not adjusted enough for the Packers offense minus Devontae Adams, like you mentioned with those receivers, and then with the Rams when they can't block for Stafford and at the wide receiver position beyond Cooper Kupp, who's banged up? What else do you have? An old, aging Allen Robinson. So good points by you, Brad. And over to another unappetizing game, the Cardinals at the Seahawks. Two bad defenses, unlike the Rams and the Panthers. Like you mentioned, the Panthers a little bit underrated up front. This line was Cardinals -3 earlier in the week. It's down to Cardinals -2.5, -110 both ways pretty much across the board. And both defenses are bottom 10 in the NFL in opponents' expected points added overall and opponents' success rate. Geno Smith and the Seahawks, Mo mentioned this on our podcast earlier in the week, that they're kind of resembling the 99 Rams in terms of an explosive passing attack. So are you back in the Seahawks as around a field goal point dogs at home, or are you taking the Cardinals to bounce back after a competitive game against the Eagles last week?
I am. I'm big into the Seahawks here. I mean, they are like top 3 in every offensive metric. You know all these charts like the PFF guys are putting out. Like Geno Smith is top. He's best in the NFL. Like they're number 1 in offensive DVOA, and it's the same for success rate, explosive plays, and we've seen them slowed down basically by the 49ers, who obviously got an elite pass rush. The Seahawks are young tackles, and that's probably how you stop them because Geno's playing well, and the skill, we know the receivers are very good. So you can slow them down with an elite pass rush. But the Cardinals don't have that. I think you can bet them on the full game. But I think probably the best way to get at it is Seahawks first half +1 or Seahawks first quarter if you can get +0.5. Because you've probably seen the stat going around that the Cardinals, I don't think have scored a point in the first quarter this year as a testament to the Cliff Kingsbury script. They're 31st in points per game in the first half, whereas Seattle is 6th in points per game in the first half. They have been good on scripted plays. They sort of was it Shane Waldron? He's a descendant from McVay and Shanahan, and we know how they like to script the first 15 plays. So getting the far superior offense, equally bad defenses, and they're getting points at home. This line was actually the same. In the off-season, the look-ahead lines from over the summer was Cardinals -2.5. And I would argue the Seahawks are being far, far superior to what we would expect. And the Cardinals are being much worse than we would expect. And this line has not moved. And yeah, that seems pretty wrong to me.
Even if you don't have a bet on this next one of the biggest games on the slate is going to be Bills at Chiefs. The look-ahead line was Bills -1. It did touch -3 earlier in the week, but now it is back down to 2.5. Mahomes is 7-0-1 against the spread as an underdog, pretty much performing at his best in his career when the betting market undervalues him. Any side for you in this game, or would you consider teasing Kansas City up?
Yeah, I don't think you're not gonna lose money teasing Mahomes, are you? Up to 8 points. I think this basically depends on whether you think that Andy Reid has the good plays, whether he's got the good plays in his playbook over here, and then the plays for the Raiders, whatever. And I probably think he does. Like you see what he does off a bye, off extra rest. You see what they did against the Bucks. And you see what Mahomes does as an underdog, which is probably it's all tied together, isn't it? So I would say if it goes back to 3. And it might, because the Bills they have been the superior team this year. I think the 3 is a buy, just because I think maybe Kansas City's season-long metrics underrate how good they actually are if they do want to be.
You can follow Brad on Twitter at Brad Allen NFL. Not only does he break down the NFL in a very interesting and intriguing way from a metric standpoint, from a market standpoint, but he also covers the sports betting industry too. And I saw you tweet this out. that you don't expect California to legalize sports betting, not only in 2022, but also it's not coming in your eyes in 2024. So what the heck's going on out west near Nicole, man?
Well, I mean, this has been an absolute debacle for the sports betting industry. They put in around 170 million this year to try and get sports betting approved on the ballot, online sports betting. And basically the California tribes from day one said, no, like, we're not going to let that happen because they don't want to lose control of the gambling industry. You know, they're worried that people will go bet online and not come to their casinos, and they're worried that online sports betting will lead to online casino and so on. And yeah, they don't want to give up their sort of control over that industry. And so they spent hundreds of millions as well to stop it. And it's, the effort this year has failed like easily. It's not got close, it never stood a chance. So they burnt 170 million on this effort, which possibly never ever stood a chance from the outset. And, whether that's lobbyists saying, yeah, we'll get it done, but without really truly understanding the sort of political situation in California. But then at G2E this week, Jason Robbins from DraftKings is saying, yeah, no, we think 2024 is more likely. But at the same, at conferences or at the same conference on a different panel, you have the same California gaming leaders going, no, like, we're still not going to want it unless, like, they basically don't want it at all, or unless they can control the industry entirely via retail. So there would be no online, and obviously, FanDuel, DraftKings would never support that anyway. So I really don't think it's happening in 2024 either, unless the industry just cedes entirely control of sports betting to the tribes, which I can't see happening either. So yeah, I think it's going to be a long old slog in California.
As a former California resident, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think this one's getting over the finish line anytime soon. Brad, thank you so much for joining us, especially after a very long flight back from Las Vegas. If you are wagering this weekend, good luck with all of your bets. Eli, Mo, and myself will see you again on Tuesday. Have a good weekend, everyone.